The night I realized my parents never saw me as a daughter was the same night I learned how easily a family can break you, and how beautifully you can rebuild yourself without them. Fariha sat at the dinner table, still tired from working 2 jobs. Her hands hurt from lifting heavy crates all day, but she tried to stay calm. Across from her, Chasai sat comfortably, scrolling on her phone like she had no worries in the world. Her nails were long, shiny, and expensive, yet she never worked a single day for them. Fariha watched her for a moment, wondering how 2 sisters could live such different lives under the same roof. Then her mother spoke, not with anger, but with a coldness that cut deeper than shouting. She said, "You work while your sister enjoys. Don't like it? Leave." The words hit Fariha so hard that she felt her chest tighten. It was like something inside her broke quietly, without anyone noticing. She waited for anyone, to speak for her. She looked at her father, hoping he would say something kind, something fair. But he kept eating, his eyes fixed on his plate, as if he didn't hear a thing. Chasai didn't even look up from her phone. She acted like Fariha's pain didn't exist. The room felt colder. The food on the table smelled nice, but Fariha couldn't taste anything. She realized in that moment that she didn't belong there the way she thought she did. She wasn't seen as a daughter. She wasn't seen as someone they loved. She was only useful when they needed something carried, cleaned, or fixed. She was there to work, not to be cared for. As everyone continued eating like nothing happened, Fariha sat quietly, feeling a strange mix of hurt and clarity. The people she had spent her whole life trying to please didn't value her. They didn't appreciate the long hours she worked or the sacrifices she made. They only saw her as someone who should keep giving without expecting anything in return. A small thought started growing in her mind. Maybe she didn't need to stay in a place where she was treated like this. Maybe she didn't have to keep pretending that this was normal or okay. For the first time, she began to understand her worth, not from their approval, but from her own strength. As she sat there, her heart breaking quietly, she realized one truth. She deserved better than this house, this treatment, and this silence. And deep inside, she knew something was about to change. Later that night, Fariha moved slowly around her small room, folding her clothes and placing them into an old bag. She thought that maybe, just maybe, someone in the house would notice what she was doing. She left the door slightly open on purpose, hoping her mother would walk by, or her father would ask why she was packing. Deep down, she wished someone would stop her and say, "Don't go. We didn't mean it." But the house stayed silent. As she zipped her bag, she paused and waited for a voice, a knock, anything. But nothing came. The only sound in the house was the loud laughter coming from the living room. Chasai's voice carried easily through the walls. She was on a call with her friends, her tone full of excitement. Fariha stopped moving and listened. "Good," Chasai said, laughing loudly. "She's finally leaving. Maybe now I can have her room. I've wanted it for months." Those words felt heavier than anything Fariha had carried at her jobs. It wasn't just a sister being unkind. It was someone celebrating her pain. In that moment, Fariha understood that she had been alone in this house long before she decided to leave. She had loved people who didn't love her back. She had hoped for acceptance from people who didn't even respect her. She picked up her bag and walked to the door one last time. She looked around the house, hoping for a memory to hold on to, something warm or comforting. But all she saw were moments of exhaustion, chores, blame, and silence. There was nothing here for her. Not one good reason to stay. When she opened the front door, the air outside felt different, cooler, calmer, almost like a quiet welcome she had never received inside. She waited again, for a final second, expecting someone to call her name. Maybe her father would say he was sorry. Maybe her mother would ask where she was going so late. Maybe Chasai would come running, pretending to care. But none of that happened. She stepped out without a blessing, without a hug, without even a fake goodbye. The door closed behind her, and still, no one noticed. No one cared. As she walked down the street, she felt her chest tighten, and she expected tears to fall. But instead of crying, something else rose inside her. It was quiet, but strong. It felt like her heart was finally waking up after years of being ignored. It was clarity. For the first time in her life, she saw the truth clearly. Leaving wasn't a loss. It was freedom. And even though she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, she knew one thing with certainty. She would never again beg for love from people who treated her like nothing. Fariha walked through the dark streets with no clear plan, just holding her small bag close to her chest. Her feet moved on their own, and before she even realized where she was going, she found herself standing in front of an old workshop. The wooden sign above the door was faded, and the lights inside were dim, but it was a place she knew well. She had spent many afternoons here as a teenager, helping the elderly craftsman, Baba Kullo, whenever she needed a break from home. It was the only place where she ever felt calm. She hesitated at the door, wondering if it was right to come here so late, but she had nowhere else to go, and her heart guided her inside. When she opened the door, Baba Kullo looked up from his workbench. His gray beard and tired eyes made him look older than before, but there was still a softness in his face that she remembered. He didn't seem surprised to see her, even though she looked exhausted and lost. He didn't ask her any questions. He didn't ask why she had left home at night, why she carried only one small bag, or why her eyes were red from holding back tears. He simply looked at her for a moment, then pointed to a small stool next to the table and said in his calm, familiar voice, "Sit. Eat." Fariha felt her throat tighten. Nobody at home had offered her food with kindness in years. She sat down slowly, and he placed a plate of warm food in front of her. It wasn't fancy, just rice and vegetables, but it felt like the most comforting meal she'd ever had. She didn't speak, afraid her voice would break, and he didn't push her. He just returned to his carving, working quietly while she ate. After she finished, she whispered, "Thank you." But he only nodded, as if it was nothing special. Then he added, "Tomorrow we start again." Those 6 words felt like a new beginning. He didn't ask what she needed to start again from. He didn't demand explanations. He simply offered her a chance to breathe, to exist, without being judged or compared or ordered around. The workshop was small, filled with the smell of wood and tools neatly arranged on the shelves. Baba Kullo walked to the back and brought out a folded blanket. He placed it on a long wooden bench, the same bench where she used to rest during breaks years ago. "You can sleep here tonight," he said kindly. Fariha nodded, too tired to speak. She lay down using the blanket as a pillow and closed her eyes. The bench was hard, the room was quiet, and the night was cold, but somehow, she felt more safe here than she ever felt in her own bedroom at home. For the first time in years, she slept without fear, without stress, without feeling unwanted. She slept with peace, knowing she was finally somewhere she didn't have to prove anything. Here she wasn't free labor. She wasn't a burden. She was simply Fariha. Every morning, Fariha woke up before sunrise in the quiet workshop. The wooden bench was uncomfortable, but it was still better than the cold treatment she used to receive at home. Baba Kullo always handed her a small cup of tea, and without many words, they began their work. The workshop became her safe place, and little by little, her heart began to heal. While her sister Chasai spent her time posing for pictures, choosing filters, and showing off a lifestyle she didn't earn, Fariha's days were filled with real work. She repaired old doors people brought in, fixed broken chairs that families wanted to keep for memories, and helped Baba Kullo fix machines that others had thrown away. Her hands were always busy, always moving, always creating something useful. Back home, her family had laughed at her rough hands and simple clothes. They acted like her skills were worthless. But in the workshop, those same hands produced things so beautiful that customers sometimes stopped and stared. Baba Kullo taught her how to shape wood carefully, how to carve small designs that made furniture special, and how to restore old pieces so they looked new again. He showed her patience, technique, and the joy of creating something with real value. At first, Fariha didn't believe in herself. She felt unsure, thinking she wasn't good enough. But every time she completed a piece, every time a customer smiled after seeing her work, she felt a small spark of pride. Slowly, she realized that she had a gift, something her family had never cared to notice. Her hands became stronger, more skilled, and more confident. She carved patterns into tables, polished wooden frames until they shined, and built chairs that looked like art. Even Baba Kullo sometimes stood behind her quietly, watching her work with a proud smile, although he never said much about it. Customers began asking who made the beautiful pieces. They wanted to meet the artist, praise her, and place more orders. But each time, Fariha stepped back and shook her head. She only allowed Baba Kullo to take the credit, or say the work was from the workshop as a whole. She didn't want people to know her name yet. She didn't want her family to hear about her success. She wasn't ready to be found. She still remembered the night she left home. She remembered her mother's cold words, her father's silence, and her sister's laughter. She wasn't strong enough yet to face them. She wanted to build her skills quietly, grow on her own, and protect the little piece she had found. So she signed her work with only 2 letters, small and hidden, enkay. It was her way of leaving a mark without revealing herself. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was becoming someone. Not for her family, not for their approval, but for herself. One afternoon, a customer came to pick up a table Fariha had been working on for weeks. It was a simple piece of furniture, but she had carved delicate patterns around the edges, each line shaped with patience and care. The customer ran their fingers over the design with pure admiration. They loved it so much that they took a short video before leaving, showing the smooth surface, the carvings, and the shine that made it look almost magical. Fariha didn't think much of it. She just smiled politely and went back to sweeping the workshop floor. But the next morning, everything changed. Her phone, an old one Baba Kulo had given her, kept vibrating non-stop. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Then Baba Kulo rushed into the workshop with wide eyes, holding his phone out to her. "Look," he said quietly. The video of her table had been posted online, and overnight, it had exploded everywhere. People were sharing it, praising the craftsmanship, and writing comments about how special it looked. Someone even called it art born from struggle. And that line alone made thousands more people curious. Fariha stared at the screen in disbelief. She had never imagined her work would reach so many people. Comment after comment asked where they could buy the piece, who the artist was, how they could order more. Her heart raced as she scrolled. This wasn't just attention. It was something big, something powerful. Within hours, messages started pouring into the workshop's inbox. At first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. People wanted tables, chairs, shelves, anything she could make. They didn't know she was the one behind the designs, but they knew they wanted more pieces from whoever created the table in the video. Baba Kulo looked at her with a proud smile. But Fariha felt something else, fear mixed with excitement. She wasn't ready to step into the light. She wasn't ready for her name to be known, especially not by the people she had left behind. She still remembered the pain of her family's words, and she didn't want them to find her yet. So she kept her identity hidden. Every time she finished a piece, she carved 2 small letters into it, almost invisible unless someone looked closely. FK. They were her initials, but they revealed nothing more. It was her quiet signature, her way of saying, "I made this," without giving the world access to her real life. As orders filled the workshop and more videos of her work spread online, people became obsessed with discovering who FK was. Some said it was a master craftsman. Others thought it was a secret artist. But none of them knew the truth, that behind all the admiration was a girl who once slept on a bench, a girl who had been thrown away by her own family. And now, without showing her face or saying a word, she was becoming a storm the whole country could feel. One evening, after a long day of carving and sanding wood, Fariha sat in the corner of the workshop answering messages. The inbox was overflowing again. More people wanted orders, wanted designs, wanted to know when the next piece by FK would be available. She was happy but also overwhelmed, trying her best to keep up. Her hands were tired, but her heart felt proud. She was finally doing something meaningful with her life, something that belonged only to her. As she scrolled through the new messages, one notification made her stop breathing for a moment. The sender's name was one she never expected to see again. It was her mother. Fariha stared at the screen, her fingers frozen above the buttons. She opened the message slowly, unsure if she was ready for what she would read. But the words inside were short and cold, just like the home she had left. Her mother wrote that they wanted her to come back. There was no mention of missing her, no apology for their hurtful words, no concern about where she had been all these months. Instead, the message explained that Chasai had a new idea, a big dream, as they called it. Chasai had announced publicly that she planned to start her own furniture brand. She had told everyone she wanted to be a businesswoman now, even though she had never worked a single day in her life. And of course, her parents believed Fariha would handle all the hard work behind the scenes, just like before. They assumed she would design every piece, build every table, do all the labor while her sister posed for pictures and took the credit. They wrote things like, "Come home and help your sister achieve her dream, and this is for the family." They didn't ask if she wanted to. They didn't even ask if she was okay. They simply expected her to give everything again. They still believed she was the same girl who worked silently while everyone else enjoyed life. The same girl who carried the weight of the house while others relaxed. The same girl they could command without offering respect or appreciation. Fariha felt a bitter ache rise in her chest. After all this time, after all the pain, they still didn't see her as someone with a life of her own. They didn't care about her success. They didn't realize that the viral furniture everyone admired came from her hands. They didn't know she was the mysterious FK. And they didn't care to ask. To them, she was still free labor. Fariha stared at the message for a long time. Then she put the phone down and took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come eventually. The moment when the house that pushed her out would suddenly need her again. But this time, she wasn't the same girl they once controlled. Fariha decided to return home, but not for the reason her parents expected. She wasn't going back as the quiet girl who obeyed every command. She wasn't the tired daughter who worked non-stop while everyone else relaxed. She had grown, changed, and found strength in a place that never judged her. When she walked toward the house, she felt no fear, only calm determination. Her clothes were clean and simple, but they fit her well. Her shoulders were straight, not bent from carrying everyone's burdens. Her eyes were sharper now, filled with confidence she never had before. She walked through the gate as someone who knew her worth, someone who no longer needed validation from the people inside. The moment she stepped into the living room, Chasai rushed toward her with dramatic excitement, throwing her arms around her. It was the same sister who once laughed when she left, the same sister who celebrated her pain. Now she was pretending to be loving and supportive, talking loudly about how much she missed her. Fariha didn't hug her back. She stood still, letting the fake affection pass over her like wind. Her father walked in next, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He immediately began talking about family teamwork, acting as if they had always been close. He spoke about unity, cooperation, and how they needed to work together to support Chasai's new business idea. He didn't ask how Fariha had survived. He didn't ask where she had lived. He didn't ask why she had left in the first place. Her mother entered with even more confidence, as if nothing bad had ever happened. She touched Fariha's arm proudly and said, "Our talented daughter is here to help her sister's dream." She said it like Fariha had no dreams of her own, like her only purpose was to make Chasai shine. She didn't mention her harsh words from that painful night. She didn't say sorry for telling her to leave. She didn't acknowledge the months of silence. Not one apology. Not one moment of reflection. Not one sign that they understood how deeply they had hurt her. All Fariha saw were faces full of entitlement, people who believed she owed them her life simply because they were family. They didn't recognize the woman standing in front of them. They didn't see her growth, her strength, or her quiet success. They only saw a tool they once used, returning at the perfect moment for them. But Fariha was no longer that tool. She stood in the center of the room, letting them talk, letting them pretend, letting them act like nothing had changed. But inside her heart, she knew everything had changed. She wasn't here to fall into their old patterns. She wasn't here to be controlled again. She had returned, but not for them. She had returned for herself. When they finally finished presenting their so-called plan, Fariha didn't argue, didn't interrupt, and didn't even flinch. She just sat there, calm and steady, letting them believe they still had control. Then, without raising her voice, she pulled a single document from her bag and placed it on the table. The sound of the paper sliding across the wood made everyone look up. Her parents leaned forward, confused. Chasai kept smiling, thinking Fariha was about to agree to their idea. But the moment they began reading, the entire room went silent. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a request. It was a contract. The agreement clearly stated that every design, every sketch, every handmade product, and every creative concept belonged only to one person, Fariha Kolo, the official owner of a newly registered brand called FK Originals. The company had already been filed, approved, and verified. She had done it all behind the scenes, quietly, patiently, while they were busy plotting how to use her talent without giving her credit. Her father blinked at the document, reading the lines twice. Her mother's mouth fell open in disbelief. And Chasai, her smile slowly melted away, like ice left under the sun. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The confidence she always carried vanished in seconds. Fariha explained nothing extra. She didn't brag. She simply said, "All my work belongs to me now." And then she added something even more shocking. Every viral design circulating online, every product people were talking about, every trend that had exploded on social media, all of it was hers. Not Chasai's, not the family's, no one else's. She had posted them anonymously to see how the world would react, and the world had loved them. Millions of views, thousands of shares, endless requests for orders. FK Originals already had a waiting list before it even launched. Her parents stared at her like they were seeing her for the first time. They had underestimated her intelligence, her skill, her strategy. They thought she was soft. They thought she was scared. They thought she needed them. But Fariha had built everything quietly, brick by brick, ready for this exact moment. Chasai reached for the contract, trying to find a loophole, but her hands shook. She kept searching for a way to twist the situation, a way to claim some part of the success, but there was nothing she could do. The paperwork was clean, legal, and undeniable. The brand existed, registered in Fariha's name alone. Any attempt to take her work would now be considered theft. The power in the room shifted instantly. For the first time, they were speechless. And for the first time, Fariha didn't feel small. She didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She simply stood up, collected her contract, and said, "This is my future. And I'm not signing it away." The silence that followed was louder than anything anyone could have said. Her father's face darkened as he slammed his hand on the table. "Cancel this business of yours," he demanded, his voice sharp. "Come home and support your sister like you should. That's your duty." Her mother's eyes glistened with false sweetness as she echoed the same words she had said years ago. "If you want a relationship with us, you must put this family first." Their voices were loud, commanding, trying to trap her. But Fariha felt none of the fear she used to carry. She took a deep breath and slowly raised her head. This time, she didn't see her parents as the authority figures who controlled her life. She saw them clearly, for the first time. She saw the years they had taken from her, the opportunities they had ignored, the pain they had caused. She saw their entitlement, their arrogance, and their refusal to see her as her own person. She saw everything and she didn't flinch. Her gaze moved to Chasai, who had been standing there, pretending to be innocent. Fariha saw the sister who laughed when she left, the one who thought she could always take what wasn't hers. Chasai's smug smile wavered as she realized that Fariha had grown, that she had changed, that she was no longer the girl who obeyed every order. "I did," Fariha said clearly, her voice steady and strong. "I did put this family first. For years, I gave my time, my energy, my life for all of you. And what did I get? Mockery, laughter, and being told to leave. Your turn ended the night you told me to go." The words hit them like a storm. Chasai's scream pierced the room, sharp and angry, a sound Fariha had expected but didn't flinch at. Her mother dropped to her knees, tears in her eyes, begging, pleading for Fariha to forgive, to help, to bend again. Her father cursed under his breath, the color draining from his face as he realized he had lost control. Fariha stood tall, calm, and unbroken. She didn't yell. She didn't argue further. She didn't allow their guilt or threats to shake her. She had spent too many years bending, too many years hoping for approval that never came. Now, she only answered to herself. The room was chaotic, full of screaming, begging, and anger. But Fariha felt only clarity and peace. She finally understood that power wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was quiet, firm, and unwavering. She didn't need them to respect her. She didn't need them to apologize. She didn't need their love. All she needed was herself. And in that moment, standing tall, Fariha knew she would never bend again. Not for Chasai, not for her mother, not for her father. She was free. She was strong. She was finally untouchable. Months later, Fariha stood in front of her workshop, looking at the building she had made with her own hands and vision. It was bigger, brighter, and busier than anything Baba Kulo had ever imagined for her. The sign above read FK Originals, bold and shining. and she felt a rush of pride every time she saw it. She had created more than furniture. She had built a space of opportunity, a place where people who had been ignored, overlooked, or silenced could grow and learn skills that mattered. Inside, workers moved carefully, shaping wood, painting, and polishing pieces with care. Apprentices learned from Fariha, watching her hands, her precision, and the way she turned raw materials into art. She taught them not just how to build, but how to believe in themselves, how to value their work, and how to demand respect for their talent. She had become more than a craftsman. She was a guide, a mentor, and a leader. Orders came from every corner of the country. People waited months just to get a table, a chair, or a shelf she had made. Social media still shared her work, but now everyone knew FK was Fariha Kolo. Yet despite all the recognition, she remained humble, focused, and steady. She never let the praise distract her from what really mattered: creating, teaching, and inspiring. Her story traveled quietly too. People who had been silenced in their own homes, who had been told they weren't enough, began to see hope in her journey. They saw someone who had been pushed out, ignored, and mocked, yet had returned not to fight or revenge, but to build a life she chose for herself. Her life had become a message. Strength, patience, and talent could overcome years of neglect and cruelty. Every evening, Fariha locked the workshop door. The streets outside were quiet, but inside, she felt power and peace. She whispered to herself, "I left once in pain. I stay now in power." She smiled softly, knowing she didn't need anyone's approval, didn't need anyone's apology, and didn't need to prove herself to the people who had once dismissed her. Her strength wasn't loud or angry. It was steady, unshakable, and self-earned. She had taken back her life, her work, and her worth. Every chair she built, every apprentice she trained, and every order she delivered was proof that she had created something lasting, something meaningful, and something entirely her own. Fariha finally understood the truth she had been searching for all along. She only needed herself. And with that knowledge, she had everything that if you loved Fariha's story, don't just scroll. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a life-changing story. Comment below what part shocked you the most, and share this video with friends who need a reminder that strength and self-worth come from within. Your support helps more voices like Fariha's be heard. So like, share, and join the journey now.